Hello and welcome to Calls. This is the 2021 Northern Trust DFS Tactics Show. Trying to get through a quick intro. We have a lot to cover. First, I mentioned last night in the Monday night in the Data Dive show, I will not have the majority of the content for the week of the Tour Championship. I have a baseball tournament at the beginning of Labor Day weekend through Labor Day weekend. I will have at least one show, and I'm not sure which one that'll be. I'll try to get as much in on that show as possible. I'm still trying to work out what my schedule is, what my travel plans are, and so forth. But that week of the Tour Championship will not be a full week of content, I don't think. Might pre-make some videos and upload them. I'm not sure yet, but I just want to let that be known. Otherwise, just the normal intro. Follow me on social media. Description links in the description. That's where I'm going to be placing my betting card tonight. I think I finalized it right before the show. I'm hoping I finalized it. So yeah. Follow me on Twitter, especially. That's where I'll be posting the betting card this week for the Northern Trust. As always, chat is open, ready to go. I want the interaction. I'm bringing it up right now. Let me know what you all are thinking, what your top fades are, who you think are the pivots for this week, what strategy you going to. Kind of want to know. I've got certainly my leans and such, and we'll go through that here in a moment, but I want to hear from you. What do you all think? What kind of contests are you playing in? All that good stuff. Lastly, all statistics are provided by Fantasy National. You hear it every episode. It's an amazing resource. It's going to make you just a much better DFS player and a much more intelligent gambler better. So it's for the golf world. If you haven't checked it out, go do it. It's well worth the investment. With that being said, let's get into the Northern Trust for DFS purposes. And we'll begin, as I normally do with DFS shows at Fantasy National. I'm going to go ahead and start with the mixed condition model that I have built in Fantasy National. At the end of the Data Dive show Monday night, I made a mixed condition model, and at the end of it, I realized that I did not put in strokes gained around the green, and that was a pretty big oversight for me. And I noticed it during the show. So I went back and started to readjust some percentages. I removed some metrics. Monday night I had about 13 metrics that I was looking at and didn't even have strokes gained around the green, which I think is going to be a big factor this week. So I removed a couple. I still have 12 metrics I'm looking for. I generally try to keep it at 10 or less, but I just think there's a lot of factors that are going to come into play here, especially because Liberty National doesn't favor one particular style of player for success. You have your bombers like John Rahm and Rory, who have done well here at Liberty National in the past. But your defending champion, at least at Liberty National from 2019, is Patrick Reed, and he's not a bomber by any means. He's not short off the tee, but you think Patrick Reed, you think short game, putting, scrambling, avoiding the bogeys and such. So there's multiple ways to get around Liberty National, and so I don't feel as bad for having 12 metrics to look at. And we'll go through them here fairly quickly, and the reasoning for why I'm using them, or put whatever percentage. Strokes gained approach for the last 36 rounds. I just think that iron play is going to be paramount this week. I believe 18 of the top 20 in 2019 were positive in strokes gained approach for the week. It's going to be a major factor, as it is most of the time in tournaments, but especially here. To the same extent, par fours are so very important here at Liberty National. A lot of times people make their hay on par fives. Not the case here at Liberty National. You've got a drivable par four, and if you are able to score even par for the week on the difficult par fours, you're going to make a lot of ground up on the field. So I wanted to see just who plays par fours well. Again, I mentioned how I omitted strokes gained around the green, so I added that for just the last 36 holes, just an overall baseline. 10% on strokes gained putting on fast bent greens. Normally I'll get a long-term baseline to see who's good, and then another one to see who's hot. I removed the most recent, the who's hot with the putter. I had to eliminate some, metrics. That was just one of them. So I just have a more medium-term length of who putts well on fast bent greens. Proximity. This is the range that is going to probably determine who plays well or not this week. In 2019, 16 of the top 20 were pretty positive in this category, upwards of, say, 5 to 6 strokes. And even 2 of the 4 that weren't were minuscule in the negative. I believe John Rahm was one of them at negative 0.1 or so. So, middling, very mild negative there. So this proximity is going to be a big factor this week, even though the majority of approach shots will come from 200 plus. It was this range, at least in 2019, and that's really all we can go by because this tournament was played at TPC Boston last year, and we're at Liberty National for this year's edition of the Northern Trust. In 2019, this range was the bigger factor on who had success or not at the top of the leaderboards. So while there will be a lot of approaches coming from this distance, it was more this that had a bigger bearing on who won per strokes gained. So that's why I'm looking at the 175 proximity here, and I'm also looking at it down here. I am using 5% for the 200 plus, but I'm more interested in the 175 to 200 in the last 36 holes. We're going with the length of the par fours that are most prevalent here at Liberty National. All 5 of these par fours happen to be the 5 toughest par fours, and they're the 5 of the 6 toughest holes on the course. So I definitely want to see who plays those lengths of par 4 well. Like I said in the beginning of this, if you're even par on that length of par 4s, you're going to make up a lot of ground on the field. So I want to see who generally plays that length of par 4s well. And I've also, here at the bottom, done the same thing for the last 12 rounds, not just an overall last 24, but I've done it on the last 12 rounds on long courses. So to get a different look at the same statistic, if you will, because this course is long, just over 7,400 yards. Strokes gained off the tee, again, at the last 24 on long courses. Just want to see a little bit of that. I am even more approach on long courses. I want to see who gives themselves opportunities on long courses and who avoids bogeys on long courses. And then, as I mentioned, long iron play. So there's the reasoning and the stats that I'm using for this mixed condition model. And let's load the results. This is sorted by price right now, and we'll get to that here in a second for the DFS. But just to give you a quick look at my rankings here, don't want to scroll too far. Paul Casey is actually my number 1 player. Makes quite a bit of sense. He's not spectacular. When you think of Paul Casey, you don't think of him as a spectacular player in any one category. He's just pretty solid across the board. He has really kind of just one bad stat here, and that's the length of par 4s on long courses here. Sorry, you can't see that. There we go. That's his bad stat. Par 4s of the length that is most prevalent here at Liberty National on long courses. So otherwise, he's got some really good stats here. I mean, he's second in strokes gained approach over the last 36 rounds. First in proximity from 200 plus. There's a lot to like there. So Casey, Cantlay, Answer, Rory, and Morikawa are my top 5 in my rankings, followed by Keegan, Jordan Spieth, Jon Rahm, Justin Thomas, and Matsuyama. Should be no surprise that the top players in the world generally rise to the occasion on invitational style fields and in bigger name tournaments, bigger tournaments and such. So the one outlier I would say is Keegan Bradley, but he just doesn't have a bad stat of the ones that I'm using. I mean, certainly, his putting can be suspect at times, certainly. Not as suspect as, say, Hideki or JT, but he's just not bad at anything. He's kind of Paul Casey light, if you will. 8th in strokes gained approach. He avoids his bogeys. He's pretty darn good off the tee. I mean, he's not short by any means. He's not the longest of hitters like Jon Rahm, Rory, DeChambeau, all that, but the combination of him, his ability to hit fairways, and the distance he has, he is underrated off the tee. He is very underrated off the tee. So I like Keegan Bradley this week, especially at the price, and we'll get into that. But he's 6th in my model. You can see here that I am pretty bullish on guys who are just, at least by the metrics, generally bad putters. And the reason being is that I don't think putting is going to be as big a factor as it normally is. And that is due to a couple of reasons. One, that these greens are small by tour standards. They're about 4,600 square feet. The tour average is about 6,000. So generally speaking, when you have smaller greens, you're going to be closer to the hole. That's the case in this little chart here, 28.5 to 28.75. So it's not terribly closer, but it is. But you see here on this, the average distance of birdie putts, 42.5% for tour average. Here, it's a little over 48%. These guys are pros. From 0 to 5 feet, that should be pretty close to automatic. I understand that it's not made every single time and all that stuff, and we're glad that I'm not playing because that percentage would drop precipitously. But these guys are pros. Generally, when they're in 0 to 5 feet, it's going to be pretty close to automatic. Adam Scott would beg to differ. Don't even get me started on Russell Henley. But generally speaking, if you're 0 to 5 feet, that's why I think putting won't play as much of a factor. The fact that the greens are smaller, the guys that are very good with their approaches are generally hitting it closer anyway, so you're going to have to make some putts. But also these guys are volatile. They're not just overall bad putters, with the exception of maybe Griot. But certainly Hideki and JT, they can get hot with the putter. They're just normally cold. They're normally not very good. But, I mean, you see here like Justin Thomas. I mean, he has gained 5 strokes. He's gained a stroke and a half. But he's also been terrible. I mean, I'm talking just like Sergio Garcia putting with your eyes closed, terrible. 8.5 there, 5 at the St. Jude, 6.5. The reason I like Justin Thomas overall is that when he has these spike weeks, 4.5 there, 5 here, they're generally, and then these are tough fields. The U.S. Open, Waste Management Phoenix Open is generally a pretty darn loaded field. Tournament of Champions, the Zozo. These are pretty big tournaments, and when he's gaining strokes, he's having a high finish. Does that mean a win? No, but he certainly has the putting capability to win. Whereas somebody like, I'm just going to use a name here, Luke List, is generally bad at putting, all the time. I tend to believe Justin Thomas can get himself hot enough with the putter that he will give himself a chance to win more so than, say, the Luke List, who just doesn't putt well at all. Hey, thanks, Josh. I really appreciate that. Yeah, Brian Stewart worked out well last week in DFS. I actually had some wagers on him as well. I hit the top 20. I was pretty happy with that call. I felt that was underrated. He was very underpriced. Yeah, bad putters certainly. Now it kind of so for those who might not have chat up, Josh actually joined last week on the show, and I hope you saw Monday's show, Josh. That in the intro, I felt kind of bad that I saw your question right at the end of the show, and I ended the stream in saying, you asked who my call to the winner was. And I'm just being transparent here. Would have said Webb Simpson, and he played well. This is not a Monday morning quarterback type thing. Russell Henley would have probably been my second pick, and until Sunday, he looked great. It looked fantastic. And then hey, he can't play the back nine on a day where everyone's shooting 63s and he shoots 71 and can't make a 4-foot putt. Don't get me started because that cost me a lot of money, But anyway, yes, you're generally right that you need guys who can at least perform on the green. And the reason why I devalue good putting versus good irons, because irons are so much more consistent. Putting is such a volatile, fickle thing. Guys can get hot one week and then just lose it. And that happens much more often than irons. Generally, if you're a good iron player, you're just a good iron player. You can certainly have off weeks, but putting is so much more volatile. And that's why I like guys like Justin Thomas and Hideki this week, especially. I mean, you saw Hideki wins the Masters. He was putting pretty darn good. We obviously don't have those statistics that are proprietary to Augusta National. But, when Hideki's putting at least somewhat well, when he's not just hemorrhaging strokes on the green, I mean, the rest of his game, look at his irons. Gaining 5 per tournament the last 5. The last 10 he's gained 4. He's certainly not terrible around the green. He's pretty darn good off the tee. If he just even breaks neutral and gets 0 on the greens, he's going to be at the top of the leaderboard. Now, that is certainly clippable, and, when he misses the 5-foot putt on hole 72 to miss the cut, come here next week and say you're a dumbass. But that's generally what I value in putting, is the volatility. Show me that you can at least get hot on a weekend. So the exception here is Griot, and he's got amazing stats all the way around except for putting, and he's been positive at times. But he's 4 straight losing in strokes. It's, I don't know, he's got higher highs than Hideki, certainly. I don't know. I think Hideki's baseline is going to be better than Griot's baseline. But getting back into the model here, that's my top 10. You can see here, lurking just outside: Shane Lowry, Harris English, Charlie Hoffman, who's kind of fallen by the wayside a little bit, considering how hot his summer. I mean, he was in fuego this summer. He was behind Colin Morikawa. He was probably the best iron player in the world this summer. I mean, starting at the Genesis in February, gaining 5 there, gained 5.5, gained almost 7.5, gained 6. He had a bad week at the Heritage and still finished 18th. 6.5, 8. He's certainly fallen off. He's played in bigger tournaments. He missed the cut at the Open. We haven't seen him in a month. He made the cut at the U.S. Open. Very middling performance. Memorial was pretty bad. He still was okay with the irons. So he's not been in the news lately as far as the golf community. I think Hoffman's a little underrated this week, especially for DFS being 7,000. So, yeah, you'll see here I've got the top 25 starred. We'll go over pricing here in a moment. I just wanted to highlight a few guys. Matt Wallace is another one at 6,500, who's been actually getting a pretty good amount of love. So he's not as unique as you might want to be if you're taking somebody down this low. Last person I want to highlight, and again we'll get to it through the pricing. I like Chris Kirk a lot this week, and again it's kind of a feel thing. It's more of a gut feeling, but he plays comparison courses well. The 3M Open is the best one that I can think of. He generally plays difficult courses well, and he's good on bent greens, fast bent greens. Top 3 stats I'm looking for at this course type. Certainly strokes gained approach. If we come here and look at the breakdown, I would call this a normal distribution. Off the tee, approach, around the approach generally is the number 1, then putting, then off the tee and around the green. However, if we dig in a little bit further, and we did this on the initial research show, let me find a guy who played in 2019. I believe Spieth played here in 2019. I got to find the leaderboard to show you this. 2019 Northern Trust. There it is. So Spieth. So here's the leaderboard. The reason why I say strokes gained approach, we're going to look at, that was the leaderboard. Let's look at the strokes gained. The top, 16 guys were all positive and pretty darn high positive. I mean, certainly you guys are outliers. Justin Rose was slightly positive. Troy Merritt was slightly positive. But 16 of the top, or 18 of the top 20 were positive in strokes gained approach. It's just such a big factor here, even more so than normal courses. And if you follow me for any length of time, you know that I highly value iron players versus putters anyway. So that's one of the 3. I don't know if it's the biggest one, but that's certainly one of the 3. The other one is strokes gained around the green. This course is generally pretty tough, and it's long. So guys who are missing their greens in regulation, they're going to have to scramble. That's why Patrick Reed won. He's just a good around the green player. He's a good scrambler. He's a good putter. He's good with short game. So that's one area too. If you want some like overhead or some easy, I don't want to call them easy, some easily accessible stats, it would be strokes gained approach, strokes gained around the green, and I think one that is that's slightly under the radar is certainly par 4s, but I do want to highlight bogey avoidance. You see here, I mean, a couple of these got Rory and Justin Rose, bogeyed more often than they should have, I guess, in 2019 compared to the people around them in the leaderboard. But again, I mean, you can say this about any leaderboard. Sure, that the guys that are up top avoided their bogeys, but these are some high numbers for avoiding bogeys. That's on a difficult course. If you make pars, you're gonna be gaining strokes on the field, especially on this course when I believe it's the 5 of the, I know it's 5 of this top 6. I can go to the breakdown. So par 4 3rd toughest, par 4 5th toughest, par 4 4th toughest, long par 3, par 4 toughest, par 4 6th toughest. So 5 of the top 6 difficult holes here are long par 4s. That's all of these right here. So I would look at par 4s 450 to 500. I would look at par 4s on a normal course distribution wise. Your par 5s far outweigh your par 4s and par 3s because guys generally play par 5s better. Here, strokes gained par 4 is so important because of what I just highlighted. Your par 4s are so difficult here. If you can make your pars and get out, you're gaining strokes on the field, generally speaking. Especially because there's a drivable par 4 too that, if you're making eagle or birdie, I mean, yes, it plays under par, so birdie's not as much, but I mean, this hole can yield some eagles. So those are a few stats. The 2 biggest certainly are strokes gained approach, strokes gained around the green, and then you can certainly argue the third. I like strokes gained par 4. I like strokes gained par 4, 450 to 500. Bogey avoidance. If you're a proximity type guy, I would look at 175 to 200. Yes, the majority of approaches will come from 200 at this course, but I will come back here and show you why I am not, where is it, proximity? Why it's more 175 to 200. So here, let's just look at the top 20. You have about an even distribution of positive and negative on the 200 plus. But on the 175 to 200, there are only 4 in the negative, and 1 was very minuscule. That's an entire tournament worth of being negative 0.8. That's negligible. And even Harold Varner that year he wasn't bleeding strokes. And he gained it up all in there in the long distance anyway. So that's why I like the 175 to 200 proximity if that's a stat you want to use. I would use something like there. I wouldn't do any putting. Putting is going to be minimalized in importance this week. That's just my look at it. So with that, why don't we go through the salary here. Let me bring up the... let me bring up the exit out of it by... No, there it is. Sorry. The ownership projections, again, this is based on Fantasy National. It's not the only projection service out there. It's just the one that I use. It's the one that I'm subscribed to. Let's do the top tier. There's quite a few 10,000 pluses this week. Starting with going in order: Rom at 11.5, DJ at 11,000, Spieth at 10.8, Xander 10.6, Colin Morikawa 10.4, Brooks 10.2, and Rory 10,000 even. Looking at just those 7, you've got 4 that are pretty chalky in some way, form, or fashion. John Rahm is at 15.5%. You got Jordan Spieth at 15.3, roughly, just a little bit over 15. Colin Morikawa is your biggest chalk in the 10K range, and he's the second chalkiest in the entire field from what I'm seeing. He's over 18%, and Rory is at just under 16. So those 4 are pretty darn chalky. DJ's at 9.5, so he's a bit of a pivot. Brooks is 10, just over 10. He's a bit of a pivot. The big pivot in this area is actually Xander at 8%. Now, granted, 8% is still a little bit, sure. But if you're giving me Xander at 8% versus Colin Morikawa, who's 10+% more. Now, yes, Colin Morikawa rates out better on my model, 5th versus 14th. But it's not like Xander's a scrub. I mean, he's 10.6 for a reason. I think what's driving his lower ownership is the price. So you're either paying up for Jon Rahm. This is my guess, is that people are paying up for Jon Rahm, number 1 player in the world, well-deserved, all that. Or they're coming down to Rory to start their team. A lot of people like Morikawa just because, I mean, you can't argue. Number 1 iron player in the world. Best at par 4s. He's not going to hit himself out of a tournament by any means, and he's been putting better. That's my guess is why Xander's getting a little less love. I'm okay using Xander this week. I have no problem with it. I can't really argue against anything. You see here, Brooks is my lowest at 26th in my ranking. Sometimes I will get a huge outlier. Say a 10K guys in the 50s or 60s. I appreciate that you giving me credit, Josh, but I was wrong on a call last week. I mentioned that I was completely avoiding Will Zalatoris. I didn't see how he was going to do well at the tournament. He ended up playing pretty darn good. I mean, he was, I think, finished -7, -8. So, clearly I'm not correct every time, but I take more pride in the fact that I find the Brian Stewarts, the Chris Kirks, the quote, hidden gems, as opposed to taking these hot takes of, Zalatoris isn't going to play well, or, Deschamps going to miss the cut, all that stuff. So, anyway, if I'm avoiding somebody in this group, it's Brooks, even though he's a slight pivot. I'm avoiding Brooks just because all of these others rate so well in my model. You got 4th, 5th, 7th, 8th. I like Xander at 14th. That's not terrible. And if he's the biggest pivot in the area, sure. Absolutely. DJ's a pivot, 9.5%. You can't go wrong, I don't think, with anyone in this group. and we'll build a couple lineups at the end of the show, but I've generally been going Rory or Colin Morikawa. I've been trying to stay away from the top end of the board because there's a lot of people I like in the 8s and 7s. Like last week, Brian Stewart was, I think, maybe 6,500 or something. There were a lot of plays I liked in the 6Ks last week for the Wyndham. Spoiler alert, there's not a lot in the 6Ks this week that I like. So I've been trying to build a more balanced lineup and trying to find my uniqueness in the guys in the 8s and 7s. And at least looking at projected ownerships, it looks like a lot of people are playing balanced lineups. They're probably paying up. Some people are paying up for Rahm and taking more lower end 7K guys, or they're going Rory Cantley, Rory Berger, something to that effect. But to top off the 10Ks, I'm avoiding Brooks. I can't argue against taking him. I mean, he's big game Brooks for a reason. And now that I'm saying that I'm avoiding him, he's going to go win the tournament and cost me a lot of money in DFS since I'm not going to use him. That's just the way it works. But I'm fading Brooks only because he's the lowest of the 6, and I like the other 6 just as well. Honestly, the reason I'm not using these 3 is just because of price. And if you're okay using Rahm and going lower in the pricing board, I'm not going to argue against it. Rahm's a good play. I mean, he's chalky. He's a good play. DJ's the same. He's less ownership. Jordan Spieth's fine. I don't discount Xander. He is the pivot. You're going to find some uniqueness there with Xander. Colin Morikawa, great. I mean, I think he's going to play very, very well this week. He's just chalky. So if that's the chalk you want to eat it. You can't argue against it. I've been using Rory and Colin and Xander just because I want to save some money later on in the pricing. So there's my take on the 10Ks. Let me make sure I'm not scrolling too far for you all to see. Yep. So Justin Thomas is the top 9K. We'll get into the 9Ks now. Justin Thomas at 98, Desham 96, Hovland 94, Hovland 95, Answer 94, Scheffler 93, Cantley 92, Berger 91, Hideki 9,000. You see here there's only one guy I don't have starred, and it's only because he just fell outside the top 25 for me. I like a lot of people in this range. This is why I've been gravitating towards building balanced lineups. It's not been uncommon for me to go Rory JT, Rory Scheffler, Rory Cantley, Rory Bergen. That seems like it's going to be fairly common, so I'm trying to find my uniqueness later, or lower on the price board. But here on, Josh, I've been using. I have no problem going like JT, Cantley, Berger. Now that's pretty chalky, but if you want to go JT, Scheffler, Matsuyama, or even JT, JT Answer English or Reed, it's certainly doable. Absolutely, especially this week. The problem with that, without using the 10K golfers, if you're using 10K golfers, I think that's going to be more common than you think. And that's just based on the calculated ownership that I'm seeing. Getting to the 9Ks here, Scheffler is 14%. That's pretty high. Cantley is 14.5%, which is a shame. He's number 2 in my rankings. I love Patrick Cantley this week. And Berger is your number 1 most used player. Let me check real quick. Yeah, at 18.3%. Colin Morikawa is slightly under that. So, again, just going by what I'm seeing with calculated ownerships and such, if you're going the chalky route, it sounds like people are going Morikawa Berger. And certainly I can't argue against that. I want to use Berger. I want to use Cantley. But these 3, Scheffler, Cantley, Berger, are the chalk in this area. Probably not... probably shouldn't be much of a surprise that they're the lowest or on the lower end of the 9K range. So that if you're doing that, it allows you to get maybe a 10K guy like Rory, like Colin Morikawa, all that stuff. So these three, Berger, Cantley, Scheffler, are pretty chalky. I'm going to eat Cantley chalk. I'm going to eat Berger chalk. I know Berger's only 19th in my rankings. Just to completely be honest, this is a gut feel on Berger. I think Berger's going to play well this week. I've already stressed how much I think strokes gained approach matters. I've already stressed how much I think this proximity matters. That's his two best stats. Certainly he has some things he's not great at around the green. The length of the par fours he generally doesn't play well. He has more bogeys than you would like to see, but the things that he is great at play great at Liberty National. So I'm going to eat the chalk on Berger and Cantley for sure. But moving down here, Justin Thomas. I like Justin Thomas a lot. He is at 10%. Desham's at 9.5%. Hovland is at 9.5%. So honestly, of the 9Ks, it looks like Hovland is the least projected ownership at 9.5%. So that tells you how popular this range is. Hovland's the least at 9.5%. So contestants in DFS are gravitating towards this end of the price board. So, and that's what generally happens in majors, in big tournaments like WGCs and invitational style fields, is that you have such good players that just get pushed down in price because you have your elite. This is such an elite field. Somebody's got to be priced down here, and you're going to have some pretty big names. Cantley's a pretty big name. Answer, who's just coming off his first PGA Tour win in pretty, high fashion at the St. Jude. And he's been playing just fantastic golf. And he gets pushed down to 9,400, whereas if this were a, quote, regular week on the tour, he might be pushed into the 10Ks after winning. It's just this is such a loaded field. So that's why, generally speaking, the public, especially in majors, but I'm pretty sure it's in WGCs too, that the public will build balanced lineups. So you want to try to get some uniqueness in here. But, when your unique is at 9.5, that's pretty hard to find unique. So you're going to be eating chalk anyway in this range. So to me, I'm going to eat the chalk that I like the best, which is Berger and Cantley. I'm certainly not opposed to using these guys. I have some exposure to Answer, to Justin Thomas. I'm just not it's not that I'm not a fan of DeChambeau. Just analytically speaking, there are a lot of things about DeChambeau's game that I don't like. But you can't argue with the results, certainly. Whenever I am given a reason to fade DeChambeau, I do. And the reason I'm doing it this week is because I like Cantley and Berger better, and they're less priced. That's as simple as that. Now, if you're a DeChambeau lover or think he's going to be great, I can't argue against using him. He's one of the lower projected ownerships in this range. So he's, by definition, a pivot. It's just 9.5% versus 15%. So it's not that much of a pivot, but it is a pivot by definition. But since this range is so pretty chalky, you're gonna eat chalk in this range. I'm gonna eat the chalk that I like the most among the entire price board. So Cantley and Berger. That's where I'm leaning, and I like Hideki too this week. Hideki's at 12.5%, so it's by no means a pivot. I like Hideki this week. I really do. We've talked about the putting, and his generally tends to be very bad, and please just be even. Please just be average on the greens, and you're going to be okay. So again, clip it. Matsuyama's going to miss a 3-footer on Friday to miss the cut and blow out my lineups and all that stuff. But that's the 9Ks. It's kind of disheartening to see that there's no pivots, but it is what it is. And I believe it was you, Josh, that mentioned that you look at Osimo. Maybe Osimo has a different projection for that range. I take nothing away from Osimo. I know I don't know Ben Raza, but I watched Ben Raza. I respect his opinions. I know he's at Osimo. Maybe they have a different take. I'm just going by Fantasy National. So moving into the 8Ks, all these guys are separated by 100 each, going from top to bottom. Make sure I'm still not scrolling past you. Yeah. Webb Simpson, English, Casey, Reed, Smith, Scott, Connors, Finau, Neiman, and Sam Burns. And you notice I've only got a few stars in here. Some guys just missed it, like Patrick Reed just missed it. He's the defending champion. Like Tony Finau, 30th. Absolutely fine to use him. Again, I just started the top 25 in my model. Coming in here, now here's where you can start finding some pivot. Here's where you start finding some pivot. So Paul Casey is the overwhelming chalk in this area at over 15.5%. Not going to argue it. He's number one in my model. I'll eat that chalk. I'm certainly going to limit the amount of exposure I'll have to Paul Casey just because he's the chalkiest play in this area, but I'm still going to use him. He's got the Daniel Berger, Patrick Cantlay thing of it seems like you're going to be getting chalk in this area of the price board anyway. I'll eat the chalk. But Casey's the overwhelming chalk in this price range at 15.7-ish. He's over 15.5% projected ownership. I'll eat it. Then you have a few that are fairly chalky. Harris English right above him is a little over 13%. You've got Adam Scott at, where do you go? There he is. He's a little over 11%. I like Adam Scott this week. He generally plays this course pretty darn well, plays this event pretty darn well. It suits his game. But I'm okay fading Adam Scott just because he's so chalky this week, or at least in this range. You also have I covered Matsuyama. Webb Simpson at 10%, Reed at 9%. So those are a little bit more pivot. And I like Reed this week. I certainly do. I like Webb this week. I like Webb this week at 10%. But at 10%, I'm much more confident in Casey eating the chalk than I am Webb and trying to find a bit of pivot, if that makes sense. But your pivots in this area, you have Cameron Smith at 7%. He's 58th in my model, but if this becomes a chipping fest, this becomes guys not hitting a lot of greens and people are going to have to scramble, Cameron Smith's going to do really well. If that's the case. It doesn't mean that'll happen. But if this tournament turns into a chipping fest where guys are going to have to scramble, guys are going to have to rely on their short game, watch out for Cameron Smith, and that's when you're going to want to take him. He's at 7%. Connors is at 7.5%. Finau at 8%. Neiman at 7.5%. Burns is at 9%. So the bottom end of the 8K is where you're finding your pivot. And this is why I was even more steadfast now in the fact that people are building balanced lineups. Again, this is just speculation. My guess is they're going like Rory, Berger, Casey, Thomas, Thomas Hovland, Cantlay, Thomas Hovland, or Thomas Answer English. That is generally what I'm seeing people are doing. I certainly can't argue that. The reason why I am recommending you don't do that is because if you're doing stuff that is very chalky, saying like you're going to take Rory and Cantlay and Casey, yeah, they're probably three of the better plays in this part of the price board, but you're setting yourself up, if you're taking three very popular guys, you're now setting yourself up to try to win a 3v3. And because 3 of your 6 spots are chalky, which means that you're not gaining leverage on the rest of the contestants in the contest that you're playing, you're trying to win a 3v3, and that's pretty hard to do. Not impossible, but it's pretty hard to do. You're just not gaining a lot of leverage if you're picking the chalky 3 players, even if they do play well. Even if they do play great, you're not gaining any leverage on the rest of the field, rest of the contestants, because so many people are going to have them. So I certainly, you have to choose your chalk somewhere, I think. I certainly won't argue Rory or Berger, Cantlay, or Casey. You just can't take all 3 or all 4 and expect to have a very, very high finish. Now, if you're just looking to cash, I know you asked about GPPs last week, Josh. If you're looking for just double ups and it's a single entry, and the guaranteed prize pool is the same for 1st through 10th, as opposed to say 1st gets 100, 10th gets 20, and down the line. If you're looking at a flat payout, then I would take the best plays. That would be Rory and Cantley and Berger and Casey. Top 3 owned players as of now. Is that over at Osimo, Josh? With Rom, Berger, Rory being the top 3, and then Webb 5th. But while I'm waiting for that reply, then the bottom of the 8Ks is where your uniqueness is coming in. I like Connors. He's a very good iron player. If he gets his short game together this week, he's going to be very good. I like Finau as a player. I don't know if this course suits him very well. Neiman, generally good player. If he gets his short game together, he'll be pretty good. I'm just kind of out on Sam Burns. There's not a lot to like there for Sam Burns. Okay. Yeah. Certainly that kind of jives right now with what I'm seeing. For Fantasy National, it's Berger, Morikawa. So 18. You got Berger, Morikawa. Rory is 3rd. Then you have Rahm/Spieth really close. Casey's up there. So yeah, I mean it's the same part of the leaderboard or same part of the price board. Some of the same people. Berger's going to be very chalky. My guess is Rory's going to be very chalky. Just because of the price points. Berger is in the low 9s. Rory's in the low 10,000. I mean, being 10,000. So, but yeah, coming back to the full-on rankings here in the price board. That's my take on the 8Ks. Your uniqueness stands down here. I like Connors. I do. I'll have some Connors and hope that he chips and putts enough to have a high finish. Again, I like Finau as a player. Don't know if this suits him. Neiman, I'm kind of iffy on. I don't like Burns this week. Scott's a little chalky. Cam Smith has a direct path to win to a W, or at least a very, very high finish, but it's not a guarantee that those conditions happen. It has to be very difficult. Maybe windy. Guys are not hitting irons well. They're having to chip and scramble and putt to pars. That's when Cameron Smith's going to be good. So I'll probably have a little bit of exposure to Cameron Smith, but I'm not banking on it because we'll get into the weather later. It looks pretty benign weather-wise. So guys really shouldn't have a lot of, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? Excuse, I guess, to not be hitting their irons well. Like there's not a lot of wind and all that stuff. So moving into the 7Ks, let's see. Let's do this. Let's do the high 7Ks here. You got Kisner, Fitzpatrick at 79, Hatton and Sungjae at 78, Poulter and Kokrak and Harmon at 77, Sergio, Russell Henley and Billy Horschel at 76, Keegan, Shane Lowry and Kevin Na at 75. You see, I've only got 2 stars in this entire range, Keegan and Shane Lowry. I like Keegan a whole lot this week. He's not great at any particular stat. I mean, his best stat, he's 8th in approach, which for me is great. That's the one I value the most. But he has no bad stat. He has no red stat here. So he's good at everything. Hey, Merkville, how do you feel? I'm doing good. I'm hoping to find some gems here. About how do I feel about Jason Day? Where's Jason Day in the price? 74. I'll get to Jason Day here in a second. He's in the low 74s. Let me cover the high 7,000s, and then I'll come to the low 7,000. Excuse me. But if you want a quick answer, I don't feel great about it, but we'll dig into him here in a second. For the high 7Ks, your chalky here in the high 7Ks, you've got Terrell Hatton at almost 10%. You've got Kokrak at 10%. And that's really it for the chalk of the high 7Ks. You've got a lot of pivots in here. Kisner's at 3%. I'm out on Kisner, but he's at 3%. Fitzpatrick's at 3%. Sung Jae's at 6%. He's been showing a little bit of life lately. I still can't. I want to believe in the talent, but I cannot believe in the results until he shows it. Ian Poulter is 7.5%. Brian Harmon is 2.5%. So if you don't agree with my rankings, you think I'm too low on these guys, then there is certainly some opportunity for uniqueness. Let's see. Brandon Grace is in the low 7s, so I'll cover that next after the high 7s. But yeah, if you think I'm too low on guys, there are some absolute pivots in this area. Absolute pivots. Like Keegan and Shane Lowry, even though they're the two that I have started, they're the highest of the quote pivots. Keegan Bradley's at 8.8%. Lowry's at 9%. I like Keegan a lot this week. I really like Keegan. I think that's a pretty darn good pivot find for Keegan, and he's at a pretty good price point here at the mid 7s, where that gives you some flexibility whether you want to push up to a maybe a high 7 that you like or a low 8, but it's also low enough that it lets you maybe take a lower 7 guy and then pay up for some chalk or some big hitter up here. So I like Keegan Bradley a lot for a lot of reasons. One, he just doesn't have a bad stat for this course, and two, he's in a very, very flexible financial point in the price board. I like Keegan a lot. I like Shane Lowry a lot. He's got a lot to like. He's got some things that you would worry. Mainly, he doesn't give himself a lot of birdies. He's not great at avoiding bogeys, but his approach is okay. He plays par 4s pretty darn well, especially those of this length. So there's a lot to like about Shane Lowry too. I'm just going Keegan Bradley in this area. But that's it for my high 7Ks. Let's move on to the low 7s here. You've got Streelman, Bubba, Siwoo, and Jason Day at 74. Tringali, Munoz, Phil Mickelson, and Cameron Champ at 73. Griot, Grace, Homa, and Leishman at 72. Sink, Vegas, Palmer, and Matthew Wolff at 71. And Hoffman, Power, Woodland, and Cam Davis at 7,000. The reason why I don't like Jason Day, and let me find out how well he has done at this tournament. The Northern Trust. So in 2019, when it was here, he missed the cut. The time before that, it was at Liberty National, was in 2013. Now he did play well, but that was 8 years ago. How different are you 8 years from then? I know I'm a lot different. Maybe not as a golfer, but I'm a lot different as a person. I don't take a lot of value in very old course history. I will give a little bit more credence to recent, say like 2020, 2019, maybe even 2018, depending on the rarity of conditions. But Jason Day just hasn't. You got to show me something. He was good at the Travelers and the Rocket Mortgage, and not to poo-poo on him, but I'm going to a little bit. Those aren't the level of fields that this is. He missed the cut at the Open. I can forgive that. Those are pretty tough conditions. He was middling at the PGA, but there was a string here of 3 straight missed cuts where he didn't particularly play great. Iron play has been inconsistent at best. Now he is a good chipper, so if this becomes a Cameron Smith style tournament where you have to chip and putt and scramble your way to pars, then Jason Day certainly has a path to a high victory, or a high finish. I shouldn't say a high victory, a high finish. I'm not there. I'm just not there. He is only at 3%. So if you're not agreeing with my assessment, or if other content creators are building up Jason Day for reasons that they're building him up, 3%, you're going to gain a lot of leverage on that field. You're going to gain a lot of leverage on that field. But one of the courses that I have been using as a comp course has been the 3M. A lot of water at Detroit Golf Club, and see, Jason Day's never played it. Oh, well, it would also help if I put 3M. He played in 2019, very middling finish, lost strokes overall. The reason I'm using the 3M as a comparison course, I do it in the initial research and the data dive, so make sure to check that out. But long story short, a lot of water, fast bent greens. The 3M is a little shorter, but it's the same style of course. And Jason Day typically doesn't play very well at that. Typically. You certainly have some outliers, but he just doesn't. Sometimes it's a gut feel, and I'm not feeling it. I'm just not feeling it. He's a good putter on all surfaces. He's a good putter, but I think putting's going to get minimalized this week because the greens are small by PGA Tour standards. They're only 4,600 square feet. So generally speaking, if you're hitting your greens in regulation, guys are just going to be naturally closer to the hole. That does give some credence to good putters, but it's minimalized because if guys are closer to the hole, generally guys are going to make more of those putts. Where you get your advantage on putting is on bigger greens or slopey greens. Though that's not here. That's just not here. So, I'm just out on Jason Day. Moving to Brandon Grace. I mean, he fell just outside of my top 25, so I don't have him starred. I mean, you want to talk about putting, he's in very good form with the putter. He generally plays par 5s pretty darn well. Or, par 4s of this length pretty darn well. He's just kind of middling with the irons. And he's got enough red statistics. I said he was good with the putter. He's good around the green and good with par 4s. He's been bad with the putter. That is a miscommunication on my part. But Brandon Grace, for as many red sets, as many things as he struggles with, I need to see the iron play better than 51st. It's not awful, but I would need to see more of that. And he's certainly been better lately. He's certainly been better lately with the irons. The past 20, he was, gaining a stroke per tournament. So is this a wave of hot form, or is this a skill set that has been increased? You can choose whichever narrative you want. He's certainly been extremely hot lately. I mean, top 10 at the U.S. Open. He did miss the cut at the Open Championship, but the top 10 at the U.S. Open, top 5 at the Memorial, second at the Wyndham in the playoff. So the reason I would be wary of Brandon Grace, notice how many strokes he gained on the green. That's 8.7 strokes. That's look in the rear view, laugh at your opponent, and drive away style numbers. And yes, he has been putting very, very well lately. But when you start to look at an overall further baseline, 0.2, and then career, negative. Again, is this a possibility of a new improved skill set? Maybe, but I don't think it's this high. If you want to tell me that it went from 0.2 to say 1.0, believable, absolutely. Guys can just get better. It's not 3.3. And he is not a good bent green putter. Now, the one thing going for Brandon Grace this week, it's supposed to be calm. So he plays his best in calm weather. But he's a bad putter on bent. His around the green's pretty solid. His irons are either extremely dialed in or extremely not. So I tend to value guys that are much more consistent in the irons and volatile in putting. With all that said, I mean, he just missed getting the star because he's 29th in my model. Brandon Grace is a projected ownership right now of 9.5%. So he's not terribly chalky, but he's also not unique in this area of the price board either. So in this area of the price board, you've got Streelman at 9.2%. Grace is, what did I say? He's at 9.6. Tringali is 9.7. You got Johnny Vegas, who's at 13.5%, which is very, very upsetting for me to see because I thought that was going to be a guy, even though I don't have him starred. I have a bet on Johnny Vegas. I thought he was going. Johnny Vegas is your all or nothing. He's going to have a very high finish, or he's going to miss the cut. If you're looking for some volatility, if you've got your guy that you think is pretty darn safe, and you want the upside play, I think that's Johnny Vegas this week. Johnny Vegas is hitting his irons well. He has been driving the ball. I mean, on long courses, he drives the ball great. He gives himself a lot of opportunities because of that, but he also has more bogeys than what you would like to see because he's volatile. He'll go out and he'll make an eagle on that drivable par 4, or he'll hit it in the water and take a double. I mean, that's just the kind of player Johnny Vegas is. So if you're looking for some upside, I was hoping that would have been Johnny Vegas, but he's at 13.5%. Seeing that, I'm okay completely fading Johnny Vegas. If other guys are willing to take the risk at the volatility of Johnny Vegas, for me, I'd have been comfortable taking the risk if you were, say, maybe 6 or 7%. And of course, this all comes to lineup construction as well. You don't want to have guys that are volatile like Johnny Vegas and JT and yada yada yada. That if you get too many of those guys and they all happen to line up and have a bad week, well, you're fucked. Just to put it bluntly, fucked. So you got to find your safe bets or your high floor, low ceiling guys somewhere. That's not Vegas. Vegas has an extremely low floor and an extremely high ceiling. So if he were 6 or 7%, I'd be willing to take that gamble, knowing that if he does play well, I'm gaining a lot of leverage on the field. He's at 13.5%. I can fade it. Let the others take the risk. Let the others take the risk. That's the game theory behind that. And the other chalky person around here in the low 7s, is Seamus Power. He got the star. He's at 11%. I'm lukewarm on him. I mean, he just fit in my top 25. I mean, there's a lot to like about Seamus Power. You want to talk about Charlie Hoffman and being in Fuego this summer. Seamus Power is in Fuego right now. Look at these ridiculous numbers. 5.5 tee to green his last 5, 7. He had a bad Wyndham, and he's still this high in his past 5. He's still that high in his past 10. He's just playing great golf. He's made what is this? 9 straight cuts. So, at 7,000, yeah, you can take a chalky guy, and if he's 7,000 and going to make a cut, sure. But there's pivots to be had in this area is how I'm going to phrase that. I like Charlie Hoffman quite a bit this week. He's at just under 7%. I like Charlie Hoffman quite a bit this week. His irons are still good. He avoids bogeys. Great at the proximity of long iron proximities. Plays long par 4s pretty darn well. So there's a lot to like for Charlie Hoffman. You got Stuart Sink, it's a 1.5%. Palmer, just under 3%. Munoz. Basically everybody other than the guys I listed. So Streelman, Tringali, Grace, Vegas, and Power. Those 5 are the chalk in the low 7s. Literally everybody else is a pivot or a complete pivot. Some of these guys are less than 4% owned. That's a complete pivot. Emiliano Grillo, I like a ton. This week. I'm going to use a whole lot of Emiliano Grillo. And I just have to bank. This is the chance that I'll take. This is kind of like the inverse of Johnny Vegas. I'll let others take the risk on Johnny Vegas since he's so high at 13.5%. Emiliano Grillo right now is at 4.5%. So not a lot of people are taking that risk on Grillo. So basically, when I start talking about 3v3s and 4v4s and all that stuff, I'm setting myself up a lot of times for a 1v1 versus with Grillo versus Vegas. And, you don't want to do that often. Because if it comes down to a 1v1, if you lose, then, you're SOL. And that's seemingly what it's going to be like for me this week. For those people who are in this area of the price board. It doesn't look like a lot of people are in this area of the price board, to be honest. But if they are, they're trending towards Power and Vegas. I'm going to go with Grillo and just pray to God he can find the green with a chip and pray to God that he can make a putt today. Or today, tomorrow, all that stuff. Praying to God that he just putts with his eyes open. He doesn't go full Sergio. So, because there's a lot to like with Emiliano Grillo. I mean, look at these elite statistics here. I mean, those are elite. Off the tee, strokes gained approach recently, opportunities gained, bogeys avoiding, approach. He's just shit. I mean, complete shit at these two things. At a baseline performance of putting and baseline around the green. Just complete dog shit. No other way to put it. The spin that what's gonna help me sleep tonight until he misses his putt tomorrow is that his best surface is bent. And he's about even. I mean, he's still negative, but he's just about even on bent. That's the narrative I'm going to ride on Emiliano Grillo tonight and let me sleep for 4 hours until I wake up and realize he can't make a 3-footer again. But his irons are great. He's always been bad around the green. There are times where he gets okay with the putter. It's just not recently. And yes, he had a bad 3M, which is a comp course. I'm hoping the off the tee comes more towards negative. The tee to green should be better than what it is, or what it was at the 3M. This is the risk I'm willing to take, is Grillo at 4.5%. So that, I guess, if you want Josh as the comparison, I guess this is my Brian Stewart call, I guess. Unless there's somebody, if you're looking for somebody lower in the price board, an actual 6K guy, but Stewart was projected at I think 8% and played really darn well. So that was the call that I was pretty happy about last week. I think Grillo's going to be okay. If he doesn't chip or putt, well, you can always come back and say, well, yeah, that should have been expected. But being at 4.5%, that's just. At 4.5%, I'll take the risk. I just looked at the time. We're running over quite a bit, although I really do appreciate interaction. Please keep asking questions. I'm going to try to rattle through the 6Ks because that way we can build some lineups in Excel before I stop the show. Let's just cover the 6Ks in its entirety here. Let's see. Any chalk in this area? So, no, everybody's green. You do have a couple of things here. Hank Lebioda, Hank Lebioda at 9% is the chalkiest of the 6Ks. Makes sense. It makes sense narratively because he's so hot. He's been playing extremely well. Where's Lebioda? I mean, he's 46th in my model. It's not like he's terrible. He's great on bent. It's supposed to be fairly calm. Again, I'm minimalizing the putting this week, and that's where his best stat has been lately, what's fueled his hot streak. He's certainly not terrible with the irons. He's certainly good around the green. I'm just depressing his value a little bit because I don't think putting is going to be as important as it normally is. So that's the chalkiest on the 6Ks. He's at 9%. You've got McNeely at just over 8. Sloan at 6.5. Matt Wallace is at 5%. So literally, if you're willing to go stars and scrubs, if you're willing to take a couple 6K guys, there's your pivot. If you're willing to go full on stars and scrubs, there's your pivot. I don't think I can do that. Even though I know it's a pivot, I don't think I'm comfortable doing that. Yes, I do have two 6K guys starred, Kirk and Wallace. I am much more, even though he's ranked lower in my rankings, 25th, barely got the start, Wallace is 17th, I am much more bullish on Chris Kirk this week. Again, I've mentioned time and time again, I am much more accepting of volatile putters, even if they tend to be bad. Chris Kirk has at least shown he can get hot with a putter for a tournament. And you notice that he's green all across here. He's just had some bad form lately with the putter. He comes around and I'm not even saying gains 6 strokes. Maybe he gains 3. He if all the others stay the same, gains a stroke on approach, gains a stroke around the green, gains 3 on the greens. I think you're going to get well worth the investment of 6,800 in Chris Kirk. That's where I'm going with that. So I really like Chris Kirk this week. If you want, you can call Chris Kirk my Brian Stewart call as well. I like Chris Kirk quite a bit. He plays par 4s of this length very, very well. He plays long courses very, very well. Very good with his long irons. He gives himself a lot of opportunities. He's great on approaches. He hasn't been so on a baseline, but he's hot with his approaches lately. So I like Chris Kirk a lot. Matt Wallace, for the same kind of reasons. He's bad with his long irons, but he's good with the proximity that... So he's bad from the proximities that matter here at Liberty National, but he generally plays the par 4s of the length very well. He's decent with his irons, so something's not clicking there. So something should regress to the mean there. Either these numbers get worse and he just has a bad tournament, or these numbers get better and he outperforms his 6,500. One of those two is going to be true. And if you take Matt Wallace, I'm not gonna blame you for it. You just believe that the negative regression comes back to the middle, and that's what I tend to think will happen because he's been fairly good recently. So I don't mind Matt Wallace at 6,500. He's just had a couple of bad tournaments. I mean, the U.S. Open, he wasn't extremely terrible. Missed the cut. He was great around the green. Memorial, he was very good with his irons, good around the green, just couldn't make a fucking putt. So those two I wanted to highlight in the 6Ks. Wallace and Kirk. And there are certainly others too, but being short on time, I want to highlight those two. Those are the two I'm gravitating towards if I venture into the 6Ks. Are those two. So let's take a real quick look at the weather. I will refresh this page for you. Looks like there's going to be some rain tonight, which means that course is going to be soft. It's going to play even longer than the 7,400 yards. So that makes me think that people like Cameron Smith, Jason Day are going to struggle because it's not going to be a chipping fest. The course is going to play long. They're going to struggle, and guys are going to hit their irons. And seeing this on Thursday, I don't know. I'm just not there because it's very, very gusty in the morning. Very gusty in the morning. Now the winds pick up, more in the afternoon, but it's not as gusty. So it's more sustained, less gust. So that right there tells me that I would have a slight lean to PM favored rounds on Thursday. And you look at Friday, it's very calm, very benign. It does pick up a little bit in the afternoon, so then that gives me an AM slight lean. So when you get a slight lean PM and a slight lean AM Friday, that means I would, if you're submitting multiple lineups, I'm going to use a DraftKings standard thing. If you have 20 lineups, if you're entering like a 20 max tournament, I would say maybe 2 or 3 you would take into heavy consideration. The Thursday PM, Friday AM guys would get a pretty big bump in your rankings. You don't want to do it a lot because certainly Thursday PM isn't a walk in the park, and Friday is completely benign. So if somebody in the AM shoots well, they're going to have very favorable conditions in the PM. It's just a slight lean. So take that for what you will. It's something to consider in a minute, maybe 5 to 10% of your lineups to favor the PM versus AM. and only because I'm short on time. If you want to see the tee times, they're out on pgatour.com/leaderboard, and that'll have the tee times for you. But let me get to Microsoft Excel. So this is going to look pretty weird here just for a second. Let me go to my spreadsheet focus. There you go. We have I'm going to cover the tiers real quick. Some people like playing those contests. They're fun. They're not exactly for me, but I like kicking it around a little bit every once in a while. In the tiers, you got tier 1 of Spieth, Rahm, Xander, and DJ. I would pick, all things being equal, I would pick Rahm. But considering the projected ownership, I think I would take Xander in tier 1. Xander to me seems like he would be more high floor, low ceiling. I mean, John, if you're asking me who I think will win more times than not in this tournament, John Rahm or Xander, it's John Rahm. But I also feel like Xander will have a more consistent finish if you played this tournament, say, 100 times. I think Xander will have a more consistent finish. You know what to expect from Xander. And the fact that he's the least owned, this is where you get your leverage, your uniqueness in tiers. So I think I would go Xander. Definitely can't argue against Rahm or Spieth. I'd probably avoid DJ in a tiers contest. Tier 2, Rory, Colin Morikawa, JT, Bryson, and Koepka. I'm out on these two for tiers. I like Rory a lot. I like Colin a little bit, only in regards to tiers. And I like JT quite a bit. So I would have ownership in these three, Colin being the least. Tier 3, Paul Casey, Abraham Answer, Hideki Matsuyama, Daniel Berger, Scotty Scheffler, and Victor Hovland. I am out on these two. I like Berger a lot. I like Hideki a lot. I like Answer a lot, and Casey's my number 1. So I would be very hard pressed to do a single entry tiers lineup just because I like 4 guys in tier 3. If you're asking me to choose one, I'm going to choose Casey because he's the number 1 in my rankings. But I mean, of those 4, I feel the least confident, I think, in Answer for tiers contest. I like Matsuyama a lot in tiers, and I'm the highest on Casey and Berger. Berger, again, even though he's the lowest ranked of those 4, it's a gut feeling. It's just a gut feeling. Tier 4, you've got Cantlay, Harris English, Webb Simpson, Patrick Reed, Adam Scott, Joaquin Niemann, and Cameron Smith. Even though we talked Cameron Smith in the traditional classic format, I had to scroll for him. I'm out on him on tiers. Clearly, I'm favoring Cantlay. I don't mind Harris English. I don't mind Webb. I don't mind Patrick Reed, but I'm heaviest on Cantlay for obvious reasons. Tier 5. To me, Tier 5 is pretty darn weak. Connors, Finau, Tyrrell Hatton, Sam Burns, Jason Kokrak, Kevin Kisner, and Matthew Fitzpatrick. Well, I had to scroll for 4 of those guys. So they're out. I'm highest on Connors, not just because of the rankings. It's because of his strokes gained approach. Finau, I just don't know if this course fits him well. If you're wanting some uniqueness, it'd be Tyrrell Hatton from Tier 5. But to me, it's Corey Connors. And then Tier 6. Sorry, I keep taking sips of Gatorade. I got a scratch in my throat. Tier 6, you've got Shane Lowry, Cameron Tringali, Kevin Na, Sergio, Russell Henley, Ian Poulter, Sung Jae, and Brian Harmon. As much as I want to like Sung Jae, I can't. Harmon, I'm out. Ian Poulter, I'm out. Henley, I'm out. Sergio's different only in the sense that if you want to believe the narrative that he plays long courses well, that's why you would choose Sergio. You're only going on the narrative that he plays long courses well. And he certainly could play it well. Sorry, I have not scrolled over for you all on that. There you go. I sincerely apologize. But Sergio, you're going to believe the narrative of he plays long course as well. I needed a freeze pane. So this is Kevin Na. Meh. Cameron Tringali. Yeah. Okay. I don't mind. Clearly my best is Shane Lowry. But I think I would go Lowry and Sergio. I think honestly I would go Sergio and Connors / Hatton. Honestly, I wouldn't mind Hatton and Garcia for the uniqueness. So anyway, that's for the tiers. Let's make a couple of lineups real quick. I'm going to hide these rows for you all. Hide columns. I said rows, I meant columns. Let's see. Make sure you all can see that. All right. Sorry, guys. I apologize. Let me freeze view, freeze panes, freeze first column. So that way you all can see who I'm looking at and their price. As I scroll over. Come on. There we go. All right. So let's try to see if we can match the public here. And I'm going to be a tad bit off-centered, and I apologize. I'm trying to look at two screens at once here. Let's try to make what we think could be the prototypical contestant thing here. This is the attempt at a chalky balanced lineup. I would think, based on the ownerships that I see, it'll be something like Rory, I'll say Berger, Casey, and again, don't worry about this column here. That's just for me in what they are in my rankings. It's more so the prices and such. Casey, let's where are they going to go from here? The chalkiest low play looks like Seamus Power or Vegas. Let's just say Vegas because he's lower owned. So that is where typically guys are stopping their team. 7,100 or 7,000. So we have basically 76 and 7,500 to play with for this quote chalky team. That would be something to the effect of, say, Keegan and Kokrak or something to that effect. Let's say they use Cameron Tringali. He's at something like 9 and a something percent. That leaves 7,800. Who's at 7,800? Terrell Hatton. That would be my guess at somewhat of a chalky balanced build. These three certainly, and then variations thereof: Justin Thomas, Patrick Cantlay, Seamus Power at the bottom. Some guys might be using Matt Wallace and trying to squeeze in like 4 big guys. There's an attempt at that. A Stars and Scrubs style approach looks like this. Let's say they do pay up for the number 1. John Rahm. So that gives us what, 80-something hundred? Well, again, I'm only going to say Power just to put some different names in here, but I'm hoping that you catch the general gist of the style of players that people are gravitating towards. I wonder if what Rory gives us here. 87? Yeah, Paul Casey. So perhaps some people are building this style of lineup. I can see some people trying to do that, the Stars and Scrubsy type. Josh, you mentioned earlier a no 10K. That's absolutely doable. Let's do Justin Thomas, and again, only because I'm trying to use different names here. Let's go Justin Thomas, Hideki. I highlighted Chris Kirk, so that'll be my bottom. I mentioned Keegan. I'm not sure if he'll be one line above or below based on price. let's say you do like Jason Day. Mercury Mill, let's say you do like Jason Day. He's at 84 or 74, excuse me. So that gives you 95. That'd be Victor. So there's a lineup if you're asking about Jason Day with no 10Ks. If you were saying maybe Brandon Grace, you change the Day to Grace. You know, that this moves Hovland up to. Well, you can't quite get to. I don't know. Let's bump him down a little bit, and you can go. Let's see. You've got 300 there, so you could go. You've got Thomas Matsuyama's at 9,000. So you could do something like Scotty Scheffler. There's a possible lineup for no 10Ks using Grace. The lineup that I've generally been gravitating towards, and again, I'm going to be using some of the same names. I've been gravitating towards this, knowing that it's fairly chalky at the top. Extremely chalky at the top. Extremely chalky at the top. I can speak. I promise. Chris Kirk. I can't talk nor type. That gives me 65. I've been using Keegan quite a bit. And 78. Yeah, that is Hatton and M. So, you know, if I try to come down or try to get like Connors in there, I'm over 500. I could drop, you know, Rory to Hovland or split this money, say, you know, Daniel Berger, and bring this down to 96 and Bryson, even though I'm trying to avoid Bryson as much, but this is the style of lineup that I've been gravitating towards. Yes, it is balanced, so it's fairly chalky in the style, but I'm trying to find my uniqueness down lower in the price board. Keegan Bradley, Chris Kirk. I mean, Connors is not, for being in the 8,000s, he's pretty unique. So, guys, I hope that that provides you all the information that you want and need to be successful this week in your DFS contests. Please reach out. Twitter, mainly Twitter. I do post a little bit to Instagram, but mainly Twitter. Especially my betting card, like you asked last week, Josh. You know who my pick to win was last week. If you're asking me just straight out who my pick to win is this week, oh gosh, that's tough because it's such a loaded field. I think if I have to choose one person only, I think I'm choosing Colin Morikawa. But I mean, my confidence in that is, you know, pretty low considering the quality of the field. So again, guys, I appreciate the interaction every Sunday, Monday, and Wednesday. Josh, I know you were here last Wednesday as well. I'm live every Sunday, Monday, and Wednesday. Thanks for the support. Thanks for tuning in. You know, as you get your roster set, by all means, go check out other content creators. I'm very appreciative that you come to me and get my analysis. You know, take whatever value you into that, but I shouldn't be your only one. This is your money that you're spending. It's your contests. Go out and get as much information as you can. Absolutely. I will make, you know, I'm not shy about admitting I go to other content creators, see what they're thinking, see if my analysis is at least lining up with their general thought process. So, guys, good luck with all your DFS stuff this weekend. Let me know how it goes. And for this weekend and every other weekend, may all your bets be profitable.